Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I've enjoyed listening to the debate and the submissions from the different speakers around the House, and I acknowledge that the issue of alcohol legislation and alcohol regulation is not an easy one. Alcohol is not the same as tobacco. It has both its positives and its negatives, and our response needs to reflect that, and also that it is a deeply political issue. And Chester Burrows is absolutely right, that everybody agrees that something must be done about the harm caused by alcohol in our country, and then with a little caveat, so long as that something doesn't affect me. And so for that reason, politicians and political parties can be a little bit nervous, I suppose, about taking bold action on the regulation of alcohol. And I suppose what disappoints me the most about the piecemeal changes that the Alcohol Reform Bill actually introduces, positive as they are, and let me reiterate that Labor is supporting them because the moves that are contained in this bill are positive. What disappoints me the most is that this really was an opportunity for all political parties to get together and make some really meaningful change. The government knew full well that Labor would have supported much more meaningful change than this. I think the Greens would have supported it too. The Māori Party would have supported it. The only party that I'm sure wouldn't have supported it would have been the ACT Party. But combined, almost all of Parliament could have pushed through some really meaningful change, and that in a way would have taken the politics out of it. Mr. Quinn referred to politics as being something as the exchange of ideas. Well, another definition of politics is the art of the possible, and actually truly meaningful change was entirely possible in this bill because we had near unanimity around the House. Well, if National had got on board with this, we would have had near unanimity around the House around some of those changes. Chester Burrows also said that you can't legislate for culture. Well, I think the Smoke-Free Environments Act actually disproves that statement, because the Smoke-Free Environments Act, through a number of different changes over the years, has changed our culture around tobacco, and it has resulted in a reduction of the use of tobacco and the harm caused by tobacco. Now, as I said, I'm not saying that our response to alcohol should be exactly the same as our response to tobacco. They are two entirely different substances. But it does prove that you can affect the culture around a substance through legislation. Chester Burrows was also right in saying that we spend a lot of time pointing fingers at one another and rather than getting together and actually coming up with a solution. I think the hospitality industry, the liquor industry, the supermarkets, the retailers, they are guilty of that. And political parties are guilty of that as well. And I go back to my statement that there really was an opportunity here for all political parties to get together and create meaningful change. Mr. Speaker, we would have liked to have seen a mechanism to increase the price of alcohol, because we do know the international evidence is unambiguous, as my colleague Charles Chauvel said. Increasing the price does reduce the consumption, and it reduces the harmful consumption. Again, we've seen it with tobacco. In fact, just this week, yesterday, in fact, I visited my local primary health organisation. I was speaking to a smoking cessation coach, and I said, have we done the right stuff this term of Parliament? And she said, absolutely. And I said, what about putting the tax up? She said, yes, every time you put the tax up, more and more people quit. It just creates it raises the threshold, and it captures more and more people every time. Same thing would happen with alcohol. There would be less and less harmful consumption of alcohol, not by increasing tax. I think increasing tax does capture too many of the responsible drinkers. Increasing the minimum price is the mechanism that we should be using. Now, Paul Quinn Paul Quinn disputes the fact that the supermarkets lost lead. Well, the mechanism by which the supermarkets lost lead is actually quite a simple one. They take that rebate that they get across the entire range of products that they receive from one brewery or other supplier of alcohol products, and they apply that rebate to one particular product on any one given week, thus drastically reducing the price of that product. But at the same time, they can say, "Oh no, we haven't lost lead across our range of products." But that is exactly the mechanism by which they use to push one particular product in any given week. And look, I remember this from my student days. We would always look at what was the cheapest product that week. What was it, whether it be Tui or Rhineck or some of those other quality products that are on the market, and that's the one that we would go and buy. I remember Rhineck being 50 cents a can, and they did that other wonderful trick of saying, I know, it was disgusting, and this is the prime example of buying something for one purpose only, and that is for its alcohol content and its cheapness, because you wouldn't buy Rhineck on the taste, that's for sure. But that's what students were doing. They were going and buying as much of that one particular product as possible, and the supermarkets also said you can only buy 3 dozen of them at a time. So of course in we went and bought 3 dozen, and then we went back in and bought another 3 dozen, and went back and bought another 3 dozen, and the supermarkets didn't stop you. That of course was just a marketing ploy as well, to make you think that you had to get in and somehow game them by buying as much as humanly possible. The supermarkets didn't mind. They were delighted. Their marketing worked absolutely perfectly. So yes, we do need to increase the price, and yes, there is lost leading, and we could have taken that opportunity with this bill. The other thing that we would like to have seen greater restrictions on is the availability of alcohol. Now look, we know that reducing the availability of a substance reduces the harm. We know that because that's why we have prohibition on so many substances. I'm not going to debate the merits of prohibition as a policy in of itself right now, but the reason we have so many products prohibited is in the name of reducing availability, and we reduce availability in the name of reducing harm. So why not apply the same principle to alcohol? Why is alcohol different from those other harmful substances? Nobody's given me a reasonable answer to that. No one's been able to explain why we treat alcohol so much differently from those other substances. And actually Louise Upston and Simon Bridges, both in a way, referred to a spectrum or a pendulum. Actually Louise Upston questioned why the Greens would like to see, I suppose, the pendulum move one way towards the middle for alcohol when they have argued in the past, and I don't know if this is their policy now, but they have argued in the past for moving the pendulum in the opposite direction towards the middle on other substances like cannabis. But that is what they're trying to achieve, I believe, by trying to move these different substances towards the middle. And that I don't find in opposition. I think that actually makes a lot of sense. But Simon Bridges said that we've moved the pendulum a long way towards the middle. That's not true. That's not true at all. We've squeaked it just a touch from extreme commercialism. I think we're still in the zone of extreme commercialism for alcohol, and there is a long, long way that we could go to bringing that pendulum back towards the middle. Nobody is advocating prohibition for alcohol, but that pendulum could move a lot further to come back towards the middle. Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to touch briefly on the other side of harm reduction. We've talked a lot about supply limitation. I'd like to talk about demand limitation as well. We do need, Rahui Kātane touched on this, we do need to see greater availability of addiction treatment services for people addicted to alcohol and other drugs. Unfortunately, what we have seen under the current government is mental health and addictions being removed from the list of priorities for DHBs, and therefore, as a result, we have seen some frontline mental health services and some frontline addiction services being cut because the DHBs have had to move their funding into the other areas that the government deems to be greater priorities than those. Addiction service provision does need to double. We do need to deal with demand limitation. Mr Speaker, this bill doesn't go all the way, but the provisions in it are worth supporting, and so reluctantly Labor supports this bill.
Amy Adams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm very